So I wanted to elaborate on, just like I did with some other whiteboard videos, kind of go a little bit more in depth than just the quick excerpt we did on the first few around training around an injury. So what happens when you get injured? And this has to be very vague because there is obviously a broad spectrum of injuries that can happen in strength sports. So number one is do no more harm. So there's a lot of different things that may come up that are injuries or small little things, let's call tendonitis or just some strains. Do no more harm. Don't keep pushing and making those things worse. Come from someone who's dealt with a lot of injuries and has learned a lot over their training career, that you're going to end up just delaying the inevitable and delaying things of things getting worse. Take the steps back and build back better in the future. Number two, train everything else. If I tear up my shoulder or I can't do something with my shoulder, I've got a lower body that is always going to need training. So find ways to do belt squats. Can I hold dumbbells? Can I use a safety squat bar if I can't hold a barbell to load my lower body and train my lower body? Something else that we can really get into that's a way in-depth conversation is called dynamic correspondence. So if I hurt my right arm and it's in a sling and I train my left arm, my right arm will improve due to nerves firing. Very little, something that I don't do a lot of, but is something that does exist. So make sure you're training everything else. People get really down when they get injured and they don't know what to do. Myself, for example, this year I've dealt with some quad nerve issue in my left leg. So I've trained everything else. I've tried to train around it and do the things that I can do around that left leg to try to improve everything else while I'm kind of in the waiting for it to heal. Number three, that kind of fits with that, is get creative. One of the hardest things to do is find different ways to do the same thing, but try to find a million different ways to perform the same exercise. Can I add bands to it? Can I add chains to it? Can I do it on this machine? Can I do it on that machine? Can I do it with dumbbells versus a barbell? Find endless ways to get creative if your exercise pool shrinks because you're not able to use your hands, for example. If you break a wrist, you can't hold on to things. Now you have to get creative on how you can load the body. So that's also going to bring a little more fun to your training and give you some variety in a time where you're not able to do exactly what you want to do. Number four, this is kind of getting into not a doctor. This is not from a doctor. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a physical therapist, nothing like that. This is just coming from experience of things that kind of I've caught myself telling people or doing myself over the years of how to try to train and rehab from injuries. Is blood flow, trying to, once I'm capable of moving said injury, is trying to, and that's the thing, is it depends on the injury, trying to get blood flow in the area. It's going to be very, very high volumes with very, very light loads. And it could just be moving. If it's got to be a shoulder external rotation, just my arm might be enough. But if I do that 1,000 times a day, if my arm can handle that, it's better than just doing 3 sets of 10 with a 3-pound dumbbell. I'm just trying to give you an example of something where volume and blood flow play such a huge role in healing, being able to flush that area, bring things in, bring blood in, bring nutrients in to flush that area, to allow it to help assist repair and healing. Another thing is time under tension and tempo. So doing a slow, controlled rep for whatever is injured, as well as maybe controlling an eccentric tempo. Eccentrics cause muscle damage. Maybe you're doing isometrics. If maybe muscle movement hurts, but maybe just an isometric doesn't hurt. That's a way that you can start training without doing more harm if you're not leading into pain by using tempos and maybe working under time under tension in sets. Instead of maybe a volume, you're saying, I'm gonna do this I'm gonna keep the muscle under tension for 30, 60, 90 seconds. And then one thing that I like to do, which as I've learned from some PTs is not the best thing, but this is what I've done a lot, is attacking from all angles. And that is doing any and everything I can to try to improve that injury. So what happens is, it's a good and a bad thing in my opinion. I like trying to get creative and do a lot to try to rehab that muscle. But sometimes you need to, as I said muscle, just injury. But sometimes you need to just do 1 or 2 things so you can see if they are leading to your progress. So this is a good tip, but also a very bad tip. And that is, make sure that if I only do 2 things and I'm seeing improvement, then those 2 things are working. But if I do 10 things and still only 2 of those 10 are working, I really may not know, am I doing everything else is really helping? So you have to be careful with this one. Are you doing too much, or are you adding too much variety, which contradicts some of the stuff here. But I've always been the person of, I want to try to throw everything at it and see if maybe something seems like it's responding. I notice something different. So maybe from attacking all angles, you add something each week. You start with something and see if you can't build on that. And it could be I start with one exercise and I add volume. Could be a way to attack a different angle. Instead of doing volume, I can change time under tension. So there's ways to manipulate things, and it may not be a week-to-week thing. It may be a month-to-month thing. So I can change up things and see if things are improving. I give you a perfect example for me with this quad injury. I've been doing a lot of lunges and step-ups and actually some plyometrics. I've not had pain with it, so it's just trying to get the nerves to fire again. So for me, doing plyometrics, I'm trying to get that body to do it, to wake back up, to try to get those nerves to fire. Now, granted, everything has been no load, and it's been very light level, light intensity plyometrics, but a lot higher volume than I was doing in the past. So now that I've progressed for, let's say, 8 weeks, which has about been 8 weeks now, I'm gonna try to start adding in a little bit of load, maybe changing my variations just a little bit to see if I respond. But otherwise, I'm gonna look at some of this other stuff, some tempo, some total time. I've started to count how many jumps I'm doing just for that, as well as now with those lunges and step-ups, instead of doing body weight, I've started to add a little bit load to them and feeling, a little bit better. So training around your injury, it sucks, it's not fun, but you can find ways to still get better when you get back from that injury. If you're a power lifter, if you can't bench, you can train your squat and deadlift. Your total still may be going to go up as that bench comes back. If you're a thrower, if you can't do hammer, but you can do the weights for distance, well, guess what? You can become a better overall thrower if you practice the events that you still can do. If you're a strongman, same thing. Find the events that you can still train, or ways, or the accessory lifts that are going to help those events that you can still do while you're hurt. Olympic weightlifting, you're just going to have to build your strength base if you can't do the weightlifting movements. Being strong is never going to hurt. So if you can get stronger in something, that's going to be a good thing, especially for getting back from injury. So what are some other things, if you've listened this long and you obviously care enough, what are some things that you do that help you train around injuries, things that have worked for you in the past and things that have not worked for you in the past? Let's see those in the comments, and maybe we'll revisit this in a month or so and see if we need to do an edit to this video, or maybe if I have some different conversations with some maybe physical therapists or other strength athletes. Let's see how we can build on this and make this maybe a little mini series.